This episode is dedicated, as usual, to our Patreon supporters. Luke Forrester, Adam Gray, David, Nathan, thank you so much for your support. Thank you also for your input on the logo design. Here's episode 5, dedicated once again to everybody on Patreon. Thank you. Welcome back, Gab. How are you?
I'm doing really good, Blab.
Good. Glad to hear it. Welcome back to all of our listeners to Sci-Fi and Fantasy Read Along. We are here today to discuss Chapter 5 of A Wizard of Earthsea, entitled, I don't remember
The Dragon of Pendor.
There it is. Thanks.
So it should be pretty exciting.
I'm looking forward to it. How have you been?
I've been pretty good. Let's see.
Pretty good.
What have I been doing?
Procrastinating as usual.
Always procrastinating.
Yeah,
but always getting the
terrible.
work done.
Just in the nick of time.
Sometimes early. It always feels good to get it done early.
No.
It does.
Never.
You don't know that.
You're right. I
You don't know all of
But when I do
secrets.
inquire...
It's true.
Yes.
I'm usually a procrastinator.
All right, so we read chapter 5. This is
5?
Yep.
5.
The end of this episode, the end of this chapter, puts us at the halfway point of the novel.
That seems kind of crazy to me. It's
It does seem kind of crazy.
Though when I first got the book and looked through it, I didn't think it was going to take very long to read.
Yeah, it's definitely taking longer than I thought as well.
Especially because of the sentences and the structure and stuff like that.
Well, what do you mean exactly?
Like when I just opened it at first, when I just looked at it, I'm like, oh, like the font isn't very small. You know, it definitely, when you open it up, you're like, oh yeah, this is a young adult book as far as like the font and
The spacing
how it
between lines
looks.
and etc. I will amend that statement by saying also that it's enjoyable, though. It's not a...
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I don't mind if it takes a while. Like, I could read this book in a day. If I sat down and I just read
me
the
too.
book, I could definitely read it in a day. It'd probably take me about 8 hours. Longer if I ate lunch, or stopped for dinner or something like that. But taking
you gotta
notes,
take breaks.
obviously. Underlining in the book, obviously. This stuff adds to the time that it takes to read.
How long did it take you to read, like when the last Harry Potter book came out, or the second to last, actually, The Order of the Phoenix?
No idea.
Sixth one.
I didn't time it.
I could read those pretty fast. I mean, those are fast reads, even though they're big, thick books. They're fast.
Yeah. She's not a challenging
Sentence structure
writer.
is way more simple. No, it's not a challenge at all. It's basically just it's a story, and that's it.
Yeah. Her writing is invisible.
Yeah.
I forget that I'm reading Rowling, which is not something I can do with Le Guin.
Not at all. I mean, we've discussed it so much already, just the sentences, and it's
High craft.
yeah.
Do you remember the sentence from yesterday?
Was it narrow run the channels between the islets, and there the mild tides of the inmost sea, chafed and baffled, run high and fall low, so that where at high tide there might be 3 islands in one place, at low there might be 1.
Yeah, that's great.
Was that it?
Yeah, that's
I think
it.
it's a
That
long
was the
one.
one. Full of commas. You have to pay attention. Honestly, you really do.
Yes.
You can't just blow through these sentences because you'll miss what she's trying to tell you.
And like that, like one part of the sentence will explain like the first part, and then the other part is explaining the next part or something. Like, yeah.
She's
Very
a crafts
cool.
person when it comes to the English language. And she's a master at punctuation. Everything she's doing is on purpose. There is no luck involved. She's a crafts person.
I would also say it's very minimal too. Anyway, yeah, very good stuff.
Very good stuff. Okay, well, why don't we hold on. Trying to remember. Oh, right. So we begin with him at his first job, and we learned where his first job would be at the end of the last chapter, Low Torning.
Low Torning, and we're both map lookers.
Oh yeah, gotta look at the map.
For sure.
You have to. I mean, she drew it. It's kind of amazing,
Yeah.
and like
And
all of
there's a
these
lot
places,
going on there.
all these places are on the map. So let's talk about why he's there. He's been sent to this place by the Archmage Genscher. There's a little flashback sequence, and we get to understand the conversation that they had between them about how Sparrowhawk is safe on Roke.
Right, but he wanted him to like complete all of his learnings and all of that,
And he did. He got his staff.
and he says specifically so that he can protect himself is part of the reason, is obviously, so that he can be strong against this shadow
That he released or created.
He needs inner strength.
Everybody does, right?
Oh, of course.
Well, they're not going to trap him. They offered him this job, and it's like this kind of... I think anybody else would not have wanted this job.
Well, Jasper wouldn't have.
Well, he's like a highborn kid, right?
He's going off to probably some rich queen lady will want to have her way with him.
Yeah.
After he makes illusions for illusions.
Yes. What are you alluding to, Gab?
I'm only going by what was in the previous chapter. Or the chapter before.
I know.
Can't remember.
I saw that too, and I was like, uh-oh. That's a different kind of novel, though. You know? That's like what's the drama novel?
Well, and this
I don't want to
novel
read those
is
novels.
specifically about Sparrowhawk, so...
It is. But this place it's described early on as like one of the 90 Isles. You should look at the map. If you don't know what we're talking about, just look at the map. It's to the south and west of Roke. Not
and
very
Roke
far
is
away.
Almost in the middle, but it's in the middle of that... Yeah, the 90 Isles and the closed sea.
These people are not wealthy. They're relatively poor. The house that they've got to put up Sparrowhawk in is without windows. It's thatched well.
The villager he was like, I thatched it. You won't get wet.
But it's got an earthen floor. But it's poor, essentially. But Sparrowhawk grew up even poorer than these people, so to him, it's not an affront. Also, he's not that interested in pride anymore since his catastrophic display.
Like when she describes the villagers going back to their families, kind of going back and explaining this new wizard. The new wizard was a strange, young, grim fellow who spoke little, but he spoke fairly and without pride.
That sounds exactly like Guin.
It does. It totally does. Yeah. The lesson he learned it hard, didn't he? Like, it's really stuck with him. It changed him.
He could have learned that lesson with Guin. He chose to go to Roke, and therein he learned that lesson the hard way.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if it would have been such a hard lesson with Guin, but he might not have learned it as quickly.
Sparrowhawk at the time, the length of time it was taking was the difficult part for him. He wanted
he's in a rush.
It to happen.
I don't feel like he's in a rush anymore.
No, not at all.
Not for that kind of stuff. I think he's still pretty slow about stuff, but there's definitely some stuff he rushes headlong into.
Right, but I think there are different reasons for that. I mean, obviously there are, but yeah.
I think so, yeah.
we didn't really mention that. I mean, he was sent to Lotorning for a specific job because the villagers of Lotorning had asked Roke to send a wizard to deal with some dragons that are close to the 90 Isles.
They're on the Isle of Pendor. We get a little bit of a history of what's going on there, but I think we should talk about that at the end when he's actually on his way to Pendor because he goes over it again there.
I just wanted to kind of mention that, like, they
wrote
a letter to Roke. Oh, they went to Roke.
Somebody physically went to Roke and
that.
asked to have a wizard sent, and Genscher immediately thought of Sparrowhawk. He's like, oh, this is perfect. This is perfect for him.
Genscher is usually a sightseer,
prescient.
Prescient.
Divination.
And he cannot see into Sparrowhawk's future. It's clouded. It's in shadow. He can't see the path. He doesn't know if the danger's coming from in front of him or from his past, or he can't see anything. So basically just be careful, Sparrowhawk. Bye.
He did say it was in the north.
Did he?
Yeah, something about something in the north that wants to kill him or something, and he can't see it.
There is a
he doesn't
power
know.
in the north, something that would destroy you, but what it is and where, whether you're past or on your forward way, I cannot tell.
Right.
Why do you think it was perfect for him?
Well, one, he was interested in dragons, and then two, I don't know.
Is it because it's kind of like an isolated post? He's used to being alone, doing things on his own. It's not going to be a post that bothers him in that way.
Genscher said that he needed to regain his strength, and that there would be no pride, no wealth, and maybe no excitement there.
Yeah.
And that might be good because, he's still recovering from the encounter he had with the shadow.
No distractions. Literally just wizard work. And fishing and stuff, we'll find out.
Right. But he doesn't do a lot of wizard work while he's there because the people are so in awe of him, and he kind of keeps to himself. that he, does a little bit here, does a little bit there, but for the most part, he's just acting as like a heel-all. And
I also kind of took it like as far as their day-to-day operations and fishing and surviving, they know what they're doing as far as that goes.
I don't think
they don't need a lot of help there, but they do appreciate the help he can offer.
How you're talking about Pechveri?
Yes, when we meet Pechveri.
Yeah.
I guess that's coming up pretty quick.
Oh yeah, it's pretty much immediate. I mean, he pretty much keeps to himself. He's quiet and etc. And he's standoffish a little bit. But he has a neighbor who's really gregarious and outgoing, and is like showing off that little boat that he's building for his son.
I didn't take it that way.
Well, they're neighbors anyway, and they have a reason to interact, and the reason ends up being that little boat.
Yeah, he's building the boat, and Sparrowhawk, like in his head, he's thinking he wants to help to make this boat better, but he knows they know more about boat making, and he doesn't want to step on their toes by offering magic.
He did not want to insult the craftsman.
So he kind of mentions a little binding spell, kind of to keep it safe from, I assumed, from like breaking up or crashing or falling apart.
There was something about making it so that it would always find its way home.
Well, yes, and then a little like navigation spell or whatever, or
right.
Yeah, location spell thing.
And Pechveri is like, "Oh my God, please, this is for my son. Absolutely, do those things."
It's
I would
totally
be very,
perfect.
very grateful. Right, so they become fast friends.
Yeah.
Just because of that small gesture of kindness or whatnot, which was nice. It was a good moment. You really get the sense of Pechveri and how he loves his little son, and he's making this little boat for him, and it's cool. It was really nice.
Sparrowhawk, we can assume he settles in. I mean, obviously.
Oh yeah, no, he totally did. He was fishing from his jetty, and
he becomes, like you said, a heal-all and a weather worker for them. That's the main magic he does. Yeah, he doesn't really want to step on their toes, but this was a line that stood out too. It did not enter his head, meaning Sparrowhawk, that a wizard might be ashamed to perform such simple crafts, for he had been a witch child among poorer folk than these.
Right.
The fact that that's even mentioned, it's like, why would he's a wizard doing a job. I didn't even think that. Like, there are lots of different posts, right? Like,
yeah, but most of them are more glamorous than this, I take it.
I guess. I mean, I guess if you glamorous by like living in a better place or living in the castle with the royals, but really you're going to be just doing the same stuff, no?
I don't know. And I think that a lot of it has to do with the environment that you're in too. Like Genscher pointed out that this was not a prestigious post.
Yeah, that's true.
Le Guin reminded us that, he's from a poor environment, and this place, though poor, is richer than where he grew up. Mm-hmm. So we're given the idea over, I think, 3 times. There's no pride in this posting. Like it's not an envious posting. No other wizard is going to be like, "Oh, I wanted that. Damn it." Right.
It does seem like the perfect posting for him, though, right now.
But no dragons come.
But we should say or mention that they have been seen.
They were seen flying over the southwest coast of Hosk. And if you look at the map, Hosk is to the east of the 90 Isles.
Right.
4 dragons were seen flying overhead, scouting the area out, because they're not hungry right now, but they're getting hungry.
And Pendor's to the west of those isles, so it's quite a little jaunt for those dragons.
I imagine it's pretty quick.
So they're scoping out the scene. Oh, sure, but I mean, they're covering a lot of ground.
There's only one real obstacle in this section, and that has to do with the illness of Iowith, which is the son of Pechveri.
Right, so Pechveri and Sparrowhawk become good friends, obviously.
They're sailing together.
Pechveri teaches him sailing.
Probably at the same time he's teaching his own son.
Definitely. They're the same skill level.
This strange wizard knows nothing about sailing.
Yeah, well, what is this man?
Well, he grew up on Gaunt, on the top of, the slope of a mountain.
Yeah, and it says till Ged was a fair sailor, but till Sparrowhawk was a fair sailor. And the friendship between him and Pechveri was a settled thing.
Yeah, they're good buds. So in the night when Iowith is sick, really, really sick, and they come and they get him. And they roam across through the rain and the storm to Pechveri's house. And the witch woman that had been caring for him lets us know, and Sparrowhawk know, that it's the red fever and that he will die tonight.
Whenever I hear like witch woman now, or I just think of Sparrowhawk's past and his aunt.
He was just described as a witch child.
I don't have anything interesting to say about that, but
Oh,
Just
that's
he's
good.
kind of with this witch woman again, like older and in a different situation. I don't know.
Well, she's the one that's doing all the healing around town, really.
Well, it said he also did heal all stuff too.
I know.
It says.
I know.
So,
I think that
and
is
his, I think, is
contradiction in
more
terms.
advanced than hers. I think she probably still did what she did.
Well, probably like his aunt. Herbs, some real magic, some
But
not real
I'm
magic.
going to assume that he also helped her to maybe eschew some of the meaningless things she did. Because we know the ants didn't quite know everything. They sometimes just maybe threw things into a pot and said, drink this. I'm making assumptions.
Le Guin clearly stated that some of her magic was actually humbug.
So I kind of have to assume the same with this
Amazing.
witch woman. But
Maybe.
I feel like Sparrowhawk, like there might be a better relationship there as far as...
Well, there's no antagonism or animosity between these two. and I
Nothing
think
like that is on the page at all. I'm making it up in my own head.
Well, I think that it could be there depending on the wizard.
Yeah, but because Sparrowhawk is the way he is...
Yeah. A proud wizard might just be like, get away from me, woman. You know nothing of the healing arts.
Right, but that's not Sparrowhawk.
He judges that she is correct. The child has the red fever and he will die tonight. But Petchfairy has so much faith in him, and Petchfairy's wife is bemoaning the fate of the child and crying, and he does not want to disappoint them.
Yeah.
So he discards his better judgment, and he decided to pursue the child into death.
He did not know how he could disappoint him. He mistrusted his own judgment and thought perhaps the child might be saved.
We've talked about this a little bit before, but like in this moment when this was happening, it occurred to me that it's a different motivation, but the effect is essentially the same, that he proceeds to do something that maybe he shouldn't do, he can't do, but he does it anyway because in this case, he doesn't want to disappoint his friend.
Do you think it's the disappointment factor?
Yes.
Even in those past situations?
No. The first time when it was the daughter of the enchantress, I think it was just pride. He wanted to show her up and make her admire him. And then the catastrophe between he and Jasper, that was just pride. Plain and simple. He wanted to show his power, right? He was flexing his muscles.
Do you think there's a little bit of pride in this, though?
No. I think he really, truly does not want the kid to die because he loves his friend. But nevertheless, the effect is the same. He goes and does a thing that he probably should not have done.
Right.
And he ends up firmly in death. And he can see the constellations in the sky that never change.
Let's talk about that.
So those are the same constellations that Nemeril was looking at as he lay dying in the last chapter.
We assume... It's not said, but obviously.
The question in that chapter was maybe his eyes were not looking at the constellations above, but they were looking at the constellations within death.
Which is really cool.
And of course, he's flying into death. These are those constellations.
Right. Now we
that
see
they're
the
referring to.
constellations that never change.
Sparrowhawk knows them all. He knows them all
Yes.
by name. He's familiar with them, but this is not a good place for him to be.
Do you think that's just a normal thing that they all learn, I assume?
I do think so.
Yeah.
There's some mention at some point in time about only a wizard can go there and come back with his eyes open.
Uh-huh.
Right? So I think they do train them to do this kind of stuff. And again, this feels a lot like Sabriel.
So much like Sabriel. Especially when the next part happens.
Right. So too far into death. What does it mean? He follows the child into the realm of death, and he knows immediately that he has gone too far.
The kid is just running ahead of him. Just running.
Yeah, down a hilly slope.
He can't
in
catch
the
him.
darkness.
He's not catching up.
So how did you picture this place?
This is so weird. I kind of pictured it like the wall, the boundary between, speaking of Sabriel, between like Encelstier and the Old Kingdom. The stone wall really gave me flashbacks of that.
Yeah.
From Sabriel. So I just had this just darkness and just kind of like an empty land and the stone wall.
The stone wall would be behind him right now.
Right.
And like I imagine because Le Guin described the little boy as running down a slope far ahead of Sparrowhawk. So I pictured kind of a hilly land, all in darkness, but he can see, right? And then there's bright constellations in the sky that do not move, and there is no wind. And then, of course, there's the low... I pictured it as like a low stone farm wall.
Yeah. Same here. A low wall, like you could leap over it.
Easily leap over it.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas
With a
in
staff.
Sabriel, I pictured that as like a fortified wall.
Yeah, more like Game of Thrones wall sort of
with
thing.
a gate in it.
Sure.
You know, that kind of a thing. Not being able to leap over it, super easy.
So he's in death. The kid, he finally realizes the kid is a little too far. I'm not going to make it.
No.
And I may have gone too far at this point. Oops.
So what does it mean to go too far into death?
You're dead.
For him.
Yeah, he would be dead.
Because he's obviously not dead.
Not yet.
I might have gone too far.
That's what I think.
He turns around and starts step by step making his way back up the hill towards the wall. It's not easy.
It's not so easy as to just turn around and walk back. I think
it's just walk to the wall, right? Okay, so you know how when you walk down a hill, it's real easy because gravity's helping you out? Mm-hmm. I think any movement in the opposite direction that's more difficult probably leads out of death.
Yeah.
If you're going downhill and it's easy, that's the wrong way. For him, anyway.
Yeah, so easy that the kid is so far ahead of him, just running towards that land of the dead. Yay!
And Sparrowhawk is struggling up to this wall.
Climbing out of death, trying to get out.
And there's a shadow. His shadowy creature is there at the wall on the side of the living looking at him. Not that it has a face. Like, I'm not real sure how
No,
you know.
The shadow did not have the shape of man or beast. Are you picturing it like a blob or how?
I'm picturing it like an intellect devourer from D&D because it's basically just like a shape with 4 legs.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And we know that it has clawed legs.
Yeah. Right.
And like an amorphous shape.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have a head, so I don't know how he knows that it's looking at him, but he knows that it's looking at him, and it's on the side of life, and he's on the side of death, being alive. Neither one of them where they belong.
That's scary to know that something's looking at you that doesn't even have a face or eyes, right? Like you just feel it.
You can feel it, right? Its attention is on you.
Scary.
So here's a moment when we get to talk about the staff, because you've been...
Spirit staff.
Yeah. Because, you know, you've been mentioning the staff and how important you think the staff is. And obviously they don't get them until they're wizards, right? They have to graduate from the School of Roke.
Right. Unlike Harry Potter, where that's like the first thing you get.
Everybody's got a wand. You know what?
Everyone's got a wand.
I could go get a wand.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like I could go to whatever his name was, Nymander or whatever his name was. Ollivander.
I
could
can't
go to
remember the other
Ollivander's
one's name now.
and get a wand.
Do you think he really had that skill? Or he was just like, they're like, he knows exactly which wand to give you. Or he's just like, man, I got a lot of extras of these in back. I'll give this one to Neville.
Yeah, exactly. It seemed like the wands kind of chose the wizard.
I suppose, but you know, I don't know what sort of magic Ollivander uses. He could have enchanted all those wands to just like, oh, this wand picks you. Oh.
I don't know. It seemed like good lore, you know.
It is. I'm just being silly.
You being mean to old JK.
Just a little bit. Yeah, they get these staffs. So let's just talk about the times. I think only 2 times we've seen staffs in action. The first time was when Guin used it. Well, we assume it was his staff. It was like a bright light at the end of his stick, at the end of his staff, when he first got the shadow to kind of back off. And then the next time we see the staff in action is Genscher using it to save Sparrowhawk after his incident.
Nemeral.
Oh, excuse me, Nemeral. That's right, because Nemeral died. Duh, Genscher's the new one. So yeah, when Nemeral saved him, I think those are the only 2 times we saw a staff in action so far.
I think so too.
And now.
And now his staff is blazing white, and he's jumping over the wall straight at that creature.
Well, he raises the staff high. It's not glowing yet. And then it like burns white, and then he goes for the leap. How I picture it like a pole vaulting, like end of the stick into the shadow, and like pole vaulted over the wall in the shadow. That's how I pictured it.
That's fine. You can picture
like
it
how
however you
else?
want.
How did you picture it?
I pictured it as he raised his staff high, it blazed white, and then he leapt over the wall.
Yeah, he leapt, felt himself fall, and saw no more.
So on the other side, back in life, like they think he's dead. The little boy has died, and that's plain as day. The little boy has died, but like everybody thinks that Sparrowhawk has also died because he is lifeless, not breathing. He's probably kind of cold. But the witch, thankfully, knows a little bit better. And she's like, no, he might actually still be alive. We should take him back to his house and keep him warm by a fire and watch him. So we'll know.
So did you take it as like he has no pulse or anything? Like if a normal person were to touch him, they'd be like he's dead, right?
I don't know. I like all indications seem to show him as a dead person.
Yeah, like if you put a mirror under his nose, his breath would be so slow that there'd be no fog on the mirror.
I don't know. What do they know?
Right. At least, and the witch barely knows. She's not even sure. She's just like, don't bury him or burn him yet. Let's try to save him.
Just throw him out for the fishes to eat.
Yeah, well, that probably is what happens, huh?
Chop him up and throw him as chum.
I imagine they cremate. Oh, or chum. What would fishermen do with their dead?
I don't know, but it seems like a waste to me to burn a body at sea. It seems like a waste because at least the fish would eat, the fish and the crabs and the crustaceans, all of that stuff. Like it's just returning all of that nutrition and energy back to the ocean. And these people are eating fish and vegetables that they're growing. It's like, why burn it? You're just wasting it. Nothing else can access it anymore.
Maybe they do like coffin boxes in the sea and like
where are they getting the wood?
Them. Yeah, I don't know.
They're probably using all their wood for boats.
I don't know why I care, but I'm just curious.
I'm not sure why you care either. I don't wrap him up in some cloth and dump his body. But they don't dump his body. They put him into his bed and a blanket and then like some woman's like watching after him and snoozing in front of the fire. And then the Otuk comes down out of the rafters and like is licking him and licking his eyeballs. Well, his eyes are closed. You
mentioned this before. Maybe, I don't know if it was something that happens later, but you had mentioned how characters just kind of come and go, like when convenient. And I feel that very much with the Otok. It's like this whole time we've had no sentence or no description of the Otok with him on this island at all until this moment.
Why wasn't it with him when he
went? I'm sure it is with him. It's just there's no description of him.
It wasn't with him. When he went to go and try to save the little boy, Ioeth, he didn't bring his familiar with him. The familiar stayed in the house.
Yeah, it hangs out in the rafters or whatever.
Yes, the rest of this chapter, all of the stuff with the dragon, where's the Otok?
I don't know what that means, but he's just not around all the time, or at least not described to being around all the time.
It's just convenience for the author, I believe.
Convenience, I agree.
I don't mind it. It doesn't bother me.
But the Otok makes an appearance because...
It's kind of one of those things also where he jumps around in time. He kind of has a moment where he is roused by the ministrations of the Otok, like licking his wrist and his eyes and his temples and his scars and etc. And he rouses. And sometime in the future, he thinks back on this moment and he realizes that he was soul lost.
Spirit lost.
Had the Otok not come down out of the rafters and been his friend, as it were, he could have been spirit lost forever.
It was only the dumb instinctive wisdom of the beast who licks his hurt companion to comfort him. And yet in that wisdom, Ged saw something akin to his own power, something that went as deep as wizardry. I took that to mean not human kindness, but just the companionship, friendship, the instinct of wanting to save someone else or save a friend or help a friend is just as strong as his wizard powers for others.
And there's some magic in it.
Right, and there is some magic in that, exactly.
Some kind of natural magic.
Yeah.
Because it was powerful enough to bring him back.
Right.
Where otherwise he was stuck, right?
And from that time forth, he believed that the wise man is one who never sets himself apart from other living things, whether they have speech or not, and in later years he strove long to learn what can be learned in silence from the eyes of animals, the flights of birds, and the great slow gestures of trees.
Hey!
So he's slowing down.
Guin again.
And realizing just watching things and observing things, you can learn so much.
I like the notion that animals, whether they can speak or not, I think that might be the author kind of reminding us to be nice to animals.
I don't disagree
and to treat them with some dignity, because though they cannot speak, they have a place in this world.
And they obviously have feelings.
I mean, I would argue that they're conscious, to be completely frank, because they have memory. If
Yeah,
they have a
it's-
memory, then they obviously have the same kind of life experience that we have in the idea that like they know what they are.
Right.
You know, they know that like this kind of stuff hurts. They know that yesterday they had a really good meal.
Right.
That human gives them treats.
You
know?
grab Gizmo the wrong way or pinch him, and go, "Bow," you know, he's going to let you know it didn't feel very good or something.
Yeah. So I think that might be Le Guin telling us that there's a better way to think about animals than just as like meat. But yes, being nice to animals because the animals are nice to us. I like the little otak. I'd like to see what it looks like.
Me
I'm picturing
too.
it in my mind as like a little weasel, but I really don't know. And it is tiny. You know, it fits in the palm of his hand.
Yeah.
But
That's
it kills
right.
mice.
It's still very small.
Yeah.
I wonder if it'll
Hunts-
grow too. I'm curious
Hunts
about
mice
that.
just fine. It's like it's a good little vermin killer.
So they nurse him back to health, I guess. I mean, it takes a while. Or they don't nurse him. They just kind of watch out for him. And
Do you remember that sentence
awakes?
though? The now began a bad time.
ah, yes. There it is. It's because he had that dream. He had a dream. And then it was now became the bad time.
So the way that I took that is that he saw this creature in death or at the border, and the creature saw him, and the creature has been waiting for him at the boundary between life and death because it didn't know where he had gone. It had been chased off, and he'd lost. The shadow had lost track of him. Mm-hmm. But now that he's been spotted, as it were. The shadow knows where he is, and it is now coming for him. And so now he's dreaming about this creature snooping around outside, kind of like a bear.
Yeah, like a bear with no head or face.
Eventually he has the dream where the creature's inside, and he's like got wear-light out and like blasting everywhere trying to see, but it's not in his house. But this is a bad time for him because he's basically feeling hunted and living in fear.
Right.
And he's putting protections everywhere to like defend himself from the shadow. And he's like, I have no energy left to defend the villagers from the dragons.
Right. And on top of everything else, he actually cares about these villagers and these people.
Right.
And he doesn't want to put them in danger.
No.
And then now began a bad time.
I would imagine that that's true, though. You know, like it was delivered to me in such a way that I could absolutely understand. Yes, this was a bad time for him. He's under a lot of stress. He probably has a lot of sleepless nights, right? Not a happy guy. It doesn't take him long to identify the one true path out of the predicament.
He could not simply flee the trap. To do so would break the trust with the islanders. So he's got a lot of inner conflict going on right now because he doesn't want to stay because this thing's chasing him. And he knows, Genscher told him, he basically knows, like, until he's strong enough, this is how I take it, until he's either, like, strong enough to fight the shadow or whatever that means to fight the shadow, he's basically just going to be outrunning it or running away from it until that time.
Right. I don't know that he knows what to do about the shadow, but I know that he doesn't want the shadow to harm the people here.
No.
So he's got to go. Mm-hmm. He needs to leave, but in order to leave, he needs to be able to take care of the dragon problem before he leaves. So he negotiates with the Isle Man to go and take care of the dragon. And he's like, trust me, it's better if you find out that I was not able to deal with the dragon now than later when they actually do show up and are a problem. And the Isle Man's kind of like, yes, that's a good point.
As good
go.
of a point as it is and as truthful as that statement is, I still think it was a manipulation. Like,
they don't want him to leave.
that's what and he knows that. I mean, why would they want him to leave? Like
They don't want him to leave, but and they think that he's suicidal. Like his buddy Petchfairy's like, oh, he's gone mad and he seeks death now. Mm-hmm. Right. But that's not what this is about. This is actually a very logical approach to the problem. It is true that they would be better off knowing that he can or cannot handle the dragon now before the dragons show up.
Right, but
So-
wouldn't you also think that if he went and somehow failed, that it could actually accelerate the process a little bit?
You better send somebody back to Roke right now.
Woo!
So Sparrowhawk died. Just thought you should know.
He was ripped apart by 9 dragons.
Yeah, the dragons ate him, and it was really horrifying. We could hear him screaming for days. So yeah, so he makes his negotiations, and then he sails away. But he's in a hurry now.
Right.
I think in that moment, there's something there where he's like he felt freedom because he was in control. He wasn't waiting around for somebody to spring attack him. He was meeting his own fate on his own terms. And he felt good about that.
It was his choice, his decision. Yeah.
And that's how he arrives at the Isle Pendor. But let's talk about Pendor.
Wait, before that, I picture him in like a little dinghy-sized boat. What sort
so
of...
funny.
how did you picture him? What kind of boat?
I picture it like a miniature Viking boat.
A miniature Viking boat? That Sparrowhawk is on.
Uh-huh. It has a single sail. It is...
That seems too grand to me.
Well, that's
I
how
don't
I
know
pictured
either.
it.
I'm picturing
That's how I
a dinghy.
pictured it.
You picture a Viking boat.
You got him.
Interesting.
You got him in a
Someone
dinghy.
should analyze this.
My experience with boats is very limited.
Oh, same here.
I'm imagining him in the boat from one of the covers on the book.
Yeah, I don't have that knowledge.
One of the book covers has him standing in a boat. I'm not even sure if it's the first book, to be honest.
He's using wizard magic.
He's in a rush. He doesn't want to rely on his newfound sailing skills.
No, he's definitely using wizard sailing spells.
Yes.
So that's why I figured the boat could be anything.
It could be, but it's,
It could be
not
one
a
of
raft.
those like bamboo, not bamboo, but like what is that? Like Thailand or like what country is it where they
Where
have those
are you
round
going?
boats, those little small round.
I know what you're
kind of
talking about.
boats. Like you need one of those.
That's not what he has. Okay? That's not what he has.
Fine. I just don't think he'd take some big boat from I just don't think he would need it. Like, why take all those resources from the people from Low Torning just to make some Viking boat?
I mean, is it a lot?
We're not given enough information.
It's a small boat. Yeah, you're kind of going off the deep end here, with he's stealing all their resources.
I didn't say that.
He's in a little boat. He arrives at the shores of
sailing
Pendor.
to Pendor. Describe Pendor.
Oh, Pendor is a fairly sizable island compared to the islands that they were on. Like Low Torning is actually Low Torning is not a tiny little island, but Pendor is bigger.
Yeah.
Pendor is where a whole bunch of really nasty people, slave takers, pirates, the Lord out there. That's what kind of person he was. He was a bad guy. And then the dragon came, killed them all, took all their treasure, and they call it a dragon-spoiled island. It is kind of lovely in its description that, there's like golden breastplates just scattered about the city streets and like treasure
jewels
just spilling out because there's nobody there. It's just dragons.
And dragons just like having it and like rummaging around in it.
I don't know.
Well, that's what I think, right? Or do they have their
is it
hoard,
like Scrooge
obviously?
McDuck? Is it like that where they swim in it and stuff? Or is it just
Dragon hoards always seem to be described or pictured like a Scrooge McDuck sort of situation, like a big pile of coins.
We think of this because of Tolkien, The Hobbit.
Yes, of course.
It is referred to as a hoard by the dragon.
I feel like the whole island is the hoard, though. Because like you said, it is described that there are these jewels and other things scattered throughout the island. It's not all in a pile. Even though I imagine there's also a pile. It matters not to us, but still.
The dragon cares.
Yes,
the
the dragon
definitely cares.
For sure.
There was a really, really great description in there of the abandoned city and how the dragons were like dragging their bodies over the like stairs and through broken doorways.
Are you picturing
and stuff.
like the tracks like going through the...
Yeah, I mean, dragon claws would leave marks in there, and the dragging the body along marble would definitely leave this is a big creature. So yeah, interesting. It was beautiful though. It was very, very nice.
So he sails up to this island. He does not go onto the island. He stays in his boat.
And he summons the dragon. In the tongue of the old speech or whatever, in the tongue of dragons.
Right.
And immediately he gets like a little scrawny black dragon. Like it's like, hey, I heard something. It pops up. Oh, I think it's like 30 feet long or something.
Okay.
Like it's a fairly sizable little thing, but it's real skinny. Its aggression is so. How do you even say that? Like It's
just pure instinct. There's no real reason to it. It's innate. is how I take it, kind of.
And it's just angry and wants to cause him damage. It just wants to hurt him.
And they haven't grown into that dragon intelligence yet, or whatever they call it in the book.
No dragon size, no dragon cunning.
Cunning, yeah, they don't have that yet. So it is just all pure instinct.
Like a child.
Let's quickly describe, too. The hunger of a dragon is slow to wake, but hard to sate. Once they do get that hunger, it's gonna be bad, which is obviously what the people of Low Torning were worried about. But these little scrawny dragons aren't quite there yet.
So it must be years.
Till they get to that point?
Yeah.
I would think so.
So years, literally. I mean, they've been spotted flying around. Maybe they didn't all hatch at the same time. And I think that's true based on...
I get that feeling, yeah.
The different sizes of the dragons.
Yeah, that's how I took it too.
So I'm not really sure how many years it takes, but they haven't gotten it yet. And the old one, the big one, apparently isn't hungry either. Or I think it would have been savaging the terrain around it.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. The big one, his hunger hasn't woken yet?
Maybe. Well, I'm assuming that like it was sated at one time.
Yeah, all of the pirates on that island were good enough
Yummy.
for the time being. Yeah,
For a couple of years, and nobody really wants to mess with this dragon.
Well,
apparently.
no. But so the little scrawny one comes to get.
It's like beelining for him with pure animosity and malice, and he just binds its wings and it flies into the sea and drowns.
Yeah, well, drops into the sea.
2 more arise, and the same thing happens to those 2 as well. They also just beeline straight for him with pure malice, and he binds them, and they fall into the sea and drown.
Yep, he just killed 3 dragons. Boom, boom, boom.
And then come 3 at once, one of which is larger anyway, much larger. And it has fire dripping from its mouth, and apparently it has a little bit of the cunning. Because while the 2 younger ones go straight for Sparrowhawk again, the larger circles around behind.
Yeah, swoops around the back. Did you expect the next thing to happen?
Dragon fight!
Yes, but did you expect what Sparrowhawk did?
Not at all. No, absolutely not.
Me either.
Absolutely not. Did not foresee him turning into a dragon, withering the 2 young dragons, and then having an actual fight with the bigger one, which is bigger than him, by the way.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, maybe he's smarter. Maybe he has more cunning. Maybe he brought that cunning with him into the shape. But he outsmarted the bigger dragon, got above it, and then dived upon it and like kind of tore it apart. And then the larger dragon disengaged and flew away.
Yeah, Sparrowhawk literally turns into a dragon. I mean, we've already had hints of the shape-shifting, obviously.
True shape-shifting. No illusion.
I don't know if we talked about this when we started, but this chapter is just a self-contained kind of adventure.
Yeah.
The Low Torning adventure, let's say.
Mm-hmm. The first of many.
From beginning to end, at least as far as we know, are his first big shape-changing thing. I have to assume this is... his specialty, one of his specialties going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we know that he can do it.
Right.
And now we see that he can do it very well.
Right. Yeah, he turned into a dragon. Hello.
Well, it was awesome. Like, the dragon blood was still in his veins when he became human again and landed back on his boat.
Creepy.
But it was, like, enough to burn him. The blood of the dragon was enough to burn him. And, like, he's all burned about the head and neck because the other dragon was blasting him with fire.
Yeah.
So, like, he sustained injury here, which was nice, but, like, it didn't seem like he was actually injured. And by the way, just a little throwback to something you mentioned earlier. Where's the Otok?
Right, where's the Otok?
Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully it's not in his pocket. Oh, well, let's talk about the big dragon. Let's talk about the big dragon.
Yeah.
Because he knows there's a big dragon here, but he doesn't know where it is. And, like, when he summoned the dragon, he got all the kids.
Right.
He got 6 of the 8 children. Those 2 that didn't come, they must be the smart ones.
Probably. They're close to adult size.
Do you remember when Sparrowhawk thinks that he's looking at a tower and then the tower moves?
Mm-hmm.
So that gave me the idea that it's easy to mistake a dragon's skin or hide or scales for stone.
Mm-hmm. I can visualize it.
At least this one particular one. Mm-hmm. So then that was what made me think that like a dragon dragging his body through a city would leave marks on the road, you know. Marble is soft.
Big, hard scales, like
Claws. As long as your forearm.
heavy tails. And yeah, let's talk about that. She describes, well, first, he sees this tower, or what he thinks is a tower, and then it moves. So it's the dragon.
I'm not sure how you mistake a tower for a dragon or a dragon for a tower, but
To visualize it, it's pretty cool. Like, it'd have to be kind of like wrapped up, or
I think it
in
was
a
the
certain
shoulder.
way.
It was the shoulder that moved, and
So the
he
shoulder
thought it was a tower.
was like the tower.
I don't know. Like, it's very hard to picture.
It is hard to picture, but I picture just a lot of grayness around,
Mm-hmm.
raw, like not a lot of color on this island. So I imagine the dragons are of similar color, or at least the big one.
Yeah.
We already know the other one's black.
The little
But like
guy
you
who
said,
died.
this one obviously blends into the surroundings very well.
well enough to
Yeah,
fool
well enough.
old Sparrowhawk anyway.
With talons the size of a man's forearm.
So that's big, man. That is big. We like the example that I like to give
Yes.
is that a polar bear's claws, and a polar bear is huge, and they are 2 inches long.
When I first read that sentence, it kind of caught me off guard because it
Like,
seemed
it's such
too
a little
small.
thing.
Like, I was picturing it way bigger, but then we talk about talon size in relation to like body size of animals, and I guess it makes sense.
Talons as long as a forearm.
And that's just the talon, not the claw or
Right.
the foot of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really can't picture how big it is. I have no real reference point, but it's a massive creature. And it now has all of its attention on old Sparrowhawk. He's like, I had 8 sons. 5 are dead, and 1 is dying. You will not have my horde by killing them.
Sparrowhawk obviously doesn't care about the horde. Doesn't
No,
want
no,
the
that's
horde.
not why he's there. That's not why he's there.
You stupid dragon.
Well, the dragon makes two
That-
assumptions.
yeah.
That Sparrowhawk's there because he's greedy and wants the horde, or possibly when he finds out that that's not the case, oh, then you want my help. You've come to seek out my help.
Right.
And Sparrowhawk's like, no, I didn't come here for that either. I came here to tell you never to fly to the east of Pendor ever. What's her name? Elfarun? What's that woman's name? The woman that he tried to summon in the previous chapter.
Oh, right.
From that era, though, this dragon is from that time. It was ancient then and was like plaguing the West at that time. And during his time at the Isolate Tower, doing his research on dragons and etc., he had come across the name of that dragon and made the sneaky suspicion connection that it was one and the same.
He's good at making connections, wouldn't you say?
That is what I refer to as intellect.
He's so great. Like, as a kid, that first incident, not the goats.
I know what you're talking about. The weaving of two spells
The
together.
weaving of two spells that took insight, intelligence, vibing it, feeling it out, too, also.
Hippie.
Like, maybe just feeling the magic vibes at the same time. Just, like, all of it all together. So what? This is a magic world. You don't think there are magic vibes going on?
I don't know.
Anyway, he took all that knowledge from the Isolate Tower that he's so good at, like, just absorbing the information, because that's real. Like, he hungered for the information. And yeah, he takes a stab. He's like, oh, let's see. He calls the dragon. What's his name?
Yavad. Yeah.
And it, like,
Freezes him in
yeah.
place. He's
Yeah.
just like, no,
Oh,
held
crap.
up. This little wizardling knows my name.
Uh-oh.
Before this moment, before the name is mentioned, the dragon has every right to believe that he's in a position of power.
Oh, definitely.
There's this little wizardling that's showed up, and he's like, I'm just going to eat you and toy with you and play with you and
He's
kill
just
you.
standing there in a dinghy. I mean, come
And then
on.
the name is mentioned, and then all of a sudden he's like a supplicant, and he's like, you may take 9 gems from the horde, and then please leave. And he's like, I don't want your gems.
Okay, question for you on that. They had already discussed, or not discussed, but he already said he wasn't here for the horde, and he's
Yeah.
not here for the help.
Yeah.
But the dragon then immediately goes back to, okay, fine, I'll give you 9 gems and you can leave. It's like, you already know he doesn't want the gems.
He's bargaining with whatever's at hand.
And he starts with the thing least important to him, I would say. Take those gems. Okay, get out of here. Even though I know you don't want them.
Well, that he doesn't want them. Sparrowhawk does not want them.
Yeah.
And then he reverts again for the second time to the name of the shadow creature. I know the name of this thing. I will give it to you, and then you can be on your way. He's like, that's a temptation. That's a genuine temptation because he wants to know the name of this creature because he doesn't want to die from it. But that's not why he's here. He came here on behalf of the people from Lotorning, and he sticks to it, and I'm proud of him for sticking to it.
And to save them from the shadow as well. Like, if he decided to just deal with the shadow here, that totally goes... It doesn't make sense. Well, that would still be a problem, and the shadow would hurt the people of Lotorning. So, like,
I don't know if that's true. He said that he only had the power over the dragon in one realm or something. I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but, like, he can only make one bargain with the dragon.
It's not total control, but it's like a loose control.
He can force the dragon to bargain in this moment, and it's either for himself or for them. So he chooses them, and he tells the dragon, you cannot fly to the east, you cannot fly to the archipelago.
Well, after a little back and forth, Sparrowhawk he said, swear it by your name. And I think we should also mention before that Sparrowhawk remembers from his teachings on Roke that the old speech, like you can know the old speech, but that is the dragon's tongue, and they can lie in old speech, whereas
humans cannot. Yeah.
Correct. So he's very weary and on high alert during this negotiation, I would imagine.
Yeah, I imagine it was pretty stressful. Yeah, this thing is huge.
Yeah.
You know, she just breathes fire. I mean, come on.
But the dragon, he swears by his name, but you can tell that it's like a forced thing.
Yeah, he didn't want to do it. Of course he didn't.
Plus, he's going to be hungry soon, and he needs to eat.
Fortunately, if you look at the map, there is stuff to the north, south, and the west.
True,
so,
but the west, there's like more dragon stuff.
Okay.
The Dragon's Run? What is that?
No idea. Interesting, though. Very interesting. Once Yavod agrees, swears by his name, Ged just takes off. Like, the dragon kind of blinks, and when he opens his eyes again, Ged is like this distant little speck on the horizon.
It's really funny. I just pictured it in my head. It was just hilarious.
I also pictured that the dragon would test the oath out right away and like go after him, but he can't fly after him because he made the oath, so he knows that it doesn't work, or that it does work.
We're not
That's
really
what I would
told,
do
but,
if I was a dragon.
No, that makes
be
complete
like,
sense.
I'm gonna go smash you, this little guy. Damn it. Well, that ends the chapter. That is the
but
end
I think
of
I think we should also note though that but it said at the end, but his oath held him, and he did not fly then or ever to the archipelago.
Right.
So we just, like I said, it's a self-contained little story there. He outwitted / defeated dragons.
I would say that yes,
it worked.
He did. He outwitted them. He outmagicked them. He outfought them.
Yes. This is not something we're going to have to worry about later in the book.
No, Yavod's not going to come back, and it's a good name for a dragon too. Like, it's cool. I had a really good time in this chapter in particular.
Yeah, I liked it.
I like to see the dragon, like, it's just neat.
Plus the world is growing a little bit even though we knew dragons existed, or at least hinted at it, well,
even for him, they were kind of a thing of legend, because there have been no dragons anywhere near Roke Island for a very long time, and even where he was from in Gaunt, like, they've not been around for quite a while.
But like, even looking at where the dragon was flying and like Hosk, over Hosk before, really not that far from Roke. I mean, Roke is right in the middle there of that whole section.
I think it has to do with the distance that people can cast spells. Yeah, like, no dragon in their right mind is going to go anywhere near Roke Island.
That makes sense. All the protections.
It's an island full of powerful wizards. It's like they stand no chance. I can't imagine that that's a good fight.
I have a question for you.
I like questions.
Where do you think Sparrowhawk goes next?
Well, hopefully to report his success to the people of Lotorning.
I wonder. Yes. But after that, I wonder if he can just send like a mental message to the Wizards of Roke and say, "Oh, that job's done. Do you have another one for me?" Or is he just going to wander? I'm so curious.
Again, from the beginning of the book, the very beginning, we have it in mind that he becomes one of the greatest wizards, possibly the greatest, certainly the best traveled.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this is the beginning of him traveling.
Yes. Because you can't travel when you're the Archmage. That would have to be
No.
like the last thing I would imagine he does.
So I feel like this is the beginning of a series of adventures, kind of like a picaresque, where, you know, an adventure in every chapter from now until the very end of the book. But I also expect that he is going in search of knowledge so that he can defend himself against that shadow. Mm-hmm. I mean, he has to know that that is in his future, and he is not prepared.
Right. I don't think he's going to be prepared until he finds out the name of the shadow.
If he ever does.
If he ever does.
Yeah. Well, there's that. That was chapter 5. That puts us firmly at the halfway point. There are 10 chapters in this book. We're right smack dab in the middle.
Do we want to say what the next chapter is?
Hunted.
Ominous.
Yes, it is ominous. And I don't get the feeling that Sparrowhawk is doing the hunting.
Oh my god, I just read the first sentence. Read the first sentence of the next chapter. Oh my god.
I don't want to.
I didn't expect it.
I will do it later.
Wait, it doesn't make sense. What? Wait a second. What?
Oh, yeah. No, it's fine. Because the world is round, Jill. What are you, a flat earther?
Oh, Jesus. I'm like Pendor crumbled to the sea. What happened? What?
All right, Gab.
Yes, Blab.
Do you feel like this is sufficiently covered?
I think so.
I don't feel like I've really got anything else to say. I know that we've got another chapter ahead of us. So with that in mind, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Gab, for joining me talking about this book, which I'm enjoying quite immensely.
Anytime, Blab. Thanks for having me.
All right, well, we're going to get to reading. Y'all do the same. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.